Good evening and welcome once again to the Free State province here in the Results Center of Bloemfontein. And from here, fortunately for the ANC, it has been able, it seems, with 93% of the votes counted to save the city where the party was founded in 1912. So unlike Nelson Mandela Bay, which is now in the hands of the DA, here at least they can still claim the pride of the African National Congress. But from what we can see right now, as I say, on the board, we see that 93% of the votes have been counted. The ANC is sitting at 62.2%. The Democratic Alliance is sitting at 19.86%, followed by the Economic Freedom Fighters at 9.7%. And from what we can see, comparing to the previous results of 2011 municipal elections, it means that the ANC has lost about 10% ground. But of course, when we spoke to Tate Mahwe earlier today, he is the coordinator of elections of the African National Congress in the province. He said, well, it has nothing to do with the ANC actually losing support. What it means is that people were unable to vote because of the bad weather. What he says are people who are previously disadvantaged, who may have not been able to travel in cars to go to voting stations. And of course, you will remember that there were about 47 voting stations that were blown away by the wind. People may have been discouraged from voting, but of course the IEC did all it could to re-erect some of those stations and of course have alternative measures for people to vote. Voting eventually closed at around 10 p.m. last night. More than 600,000 voters in the Free State have voted, of 1.4 million expected, and that puts the voter turnout at about 44% here in the Free State. It is much, much lower than the 2011 elections, which were sitting at 55.22% in terms of the voter turnout. Now, to look at the Free State with me is Dr. Joyce Mageta, who is a political analyst, but also a former rector or deputy rector of the University of the Free State. She has a PhD in elections and electoral systems, the South African perspective. Dr. Mageta, when we look at this board, and the Free State in particular, traditionally an ANC stronghold that now seems to be sleeping. What, when you look at this picture, would you say is happening with what you have been studying?
I think at this point, looking at how the results are, you will realize that people are getting the courage to make a different choice. And the civil society is starting to express their needs and realizing that to follow a party that do not necessarily listen to you. You can realize now, the ANC has basically gotten all the municipalities. It's still a majority party, but you have to go deeper into that kind of support. Because if you remember, within the Constitution of South Africa now, Chapter 7, where local government is stipulated properly, it is meant to advocate for the people. It is meant to influence policy, encouraging bottom-up decision-making. And if a party is not listening to the people at the bottom, that is why we have a young player, a young political party, EFF, making inroads into the same following of the ANC. Whether we like it or not, it's the following of the ANC that they are chipping on, because people are tired of getting promises, and people are tired right now when we talk, even those people who voted for the ANC right now, in some of the municipalities, service delivery, it's a disaster. There are people without water now as we talk, and it has become normal. And people, those who didn't vote maybe, they're just tired of complaining. And some of those who voted are still hopeful that one day the party will listen to them. But EFF has just chipped a bit on the following of the ANC.
Now, when we look at the Free State picture, for instance, we see the Freedom Front Plus. It is on fourth place right now in terms of the standings at 93% of the votes calculated in the Free State. Now, it is an interesting factor because, for instance, the Freedom Front Plus has been very vocal in terms of protecting the rights of Afrikaner language, for instance, throughout the country, not just in the Free State.
Yeah.
What sort of player is it in terms of the political landscape that maintains its position there?
I think Freedom Front Plus, when you look at it, it's actually one of those parties that are going down slowly. I wonder whether in 2019 national elections, whether it will be there. But when you look at them, they are one issue, two issue kind of political party that only stands for a particular group of people, and sort of making people fear to be part of South Africa, because the intention is to unify society. When you look at how it's playing out, you realize that the parties that are making it are parties that are actually trying to unify society. They are parties that are trying to bring out the values of South Africa, of people unifying and building one nation. But instilling fear, you look at Freedom Front Plus and the role that is playing within society, pushing the issue of Afrikaans. Afrikaans is a South African language. There's no need to fight to protect it. It is protected because it's one of the 11 national languages. But until they open up, I think they will improve their performance. But at this rate, it's either they're going to remain at that level or they're going to go down.
Now, if we go a little bit further down, we find the Congress of the People. Its founder, Musiwa Lekota, was at some point even the premier of the Free State. And if we look at what they had done in terms of the 2011 standings, they were sitting at 3.46% of the vote, and now so far they're only doing 0.85%.
And now that is a sad story. You know, I remember when COPE was established, and I remember we hosted COPE at the University of the Free State at that time. The excitement that people got the courage to start a party. To start a party is not a child's play. But you realize that what killed the party right from the beginning, it's delaying to hold elections of the leadership of the party. But a party that bases their existence on the charismatic personality that they have struggles to actually stand on its own. Because when we talk about COPE, we talk about Thera Lekota. Beyond him, we don't understand what COPE stands for. But it gave hope to South Africa to say the landscape is there, the space is there for new parties to come on board, for new parties to challenge. It's a pity that such a party is going down as well. But they will have to figure out how they feature. But because the challenges on the ground are difficult, and I think you will understand that parties like COPE are smaller parties, and finances are a challenge. When you have to stand in all municipalities around the country, it becomes another challenge. But I think it's a leadership challenge more than anything else, and clarifying what they stand for and the message that they take to communities. Because when you look at the ANC, you know their message. You look at DA, you know their message. You look at EFF, you know, you can actually understand. COPE is floating around. You're not so sure. It's a party in existence, and it is said that it's going that road. I don't know how they're going to rescue themselves, because South Africa needs more parties like that.
Now, if we unpack the performance of the main parties now in the Free State, now, for instance, if we look at the areas that have the best performance of the ANC are areas like your Harib and of course the other areas that are in the northern parts. But if you look at the Mangaung Metro, for instance, you're looking at the DA at 25% of the vote, you're looking at EFF at about 10% of the vote, and the ANC trailing there at just about 60%. Of course, it's with 93% of the vote counted, but of course, if we look at the Mangaung Metro specifically, it is 92%. What are we seeing there?
You know what? The ANC generally within the Free State. Free State it's a farming province mostly, and you realize it's poor communities, it's rural communities, where there's predominance of ANC. You realize it's people who are so dependent on what they hear and the promises. Even if they don't get the results, they still remain loyal because they are hoping that one day they will get services. When you go to Mangaung, it's largely a city. It's a mix of rural, middle class, and all that. So people are able to start thinking for themselves and really looking for other options. But there are those people who are hanging on to the word of the ANC with their soul to say one day it will come to them. It's the areas are very, very, very poor. When you go into those areas, when you go to Letsemeng, when you go to Harib, I mean, it is so sad that even when people have to do business, it's Bloemfontein or Colesberg. When you go deeper into community service delivery issues on the ground, it is sad. It is really, really sad. These are areas where politicians will go once in a while, but people just remain loyal.
Can we then say this is a warning for the ANC at this point in time?
You know what? I would say to the ANC right now, people believe in the ANC so much. And it's helpless people who are hoping that the ANC would get its act right and really, really serve. We do not have to depend on opposition parties to actually keep the ruling party. It's an issue of dignity. We have the kind of constitution that we have with the chapter 2 in it that emphasizes human dignity. Now, any party registered in South Africa and working with the people in South Africa, human dignity should be the first thing. Respect for the people. When you talk respect, you're talking about the services on the ground. The water issue, it's a concern. And if they respect their members, they should give them those services.
That is Dr. Choice Makgetha giving a word of warning to the African National Congress in the Free State if they want to maintain their support here. And of course, we have 7% more votes to look at to see how the party really performs, and other parties that like the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, the new players here in the Free State. It's back to you in studio.
And Takwana Ngatane, thank you very much.